Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Wellness Coach on Blog Talk Radio. I'm your host, Edie Summers. The Wellness Coach is your oasis to slow down, tune in, and reboot. Find us on the web at portlandwellnesscoach.com. Follow us to make sure that you are the first to know about upcoming exclusive interviews. We have JJ Virgin. She's a celebrity author and trainer. She's coming up soon, along with best-selling author Deepak Chopra and much more. Follow us to make sure that you're in the know. And today, I cannot express my gratitude for how grateful I am to have investigative journalist and author and documentary filmmaker Shannon Harvey in the studio with me. She's going to be joining us in just a few minutes here from Australia. Shannon and her husband have put together, first of all, an absolutely phenomenal documentary. It's on the mind-body connection and chronic illness. It's called The Connection, Mind Your Body. It's on helping you to understand the link between mind, body, and chronic illness. And in addition, Shannon Harvey just came out with a book that is a follow-up to this absolutely phenomenal documentary. I cannot recommend checking it out enough. If you have any type of chronic illness or autoimmune disorder, this documentary and book is the place that you should be to find answers. The book, which is a follow-up to The Connection, Mind Your Body, is called The Whole Health Life, How You Can Learn to Get Healthy, Find Balance, and Live Better in this crazy, busy modern world. And Shannon will be joining us in just a few moments. And I can't tell you how much this topic is. It's so important to me personally. This is something I've been through myself, both chronic condition, CFS, some of you might know, and also CFS is also considered an autoimmune condition in some circles. A lot of people I know have autoimmune disorders, including MS and lupus and fibromyalgia. If you're having any type of trouble with not only a chronic condition, but also just, trying to learn how to live better in this modern world and manage your stress better, this is the interview and the podcast to listen to. This is also a very personal topic to me. I actually have my own journey and book on this subject. It's called The Memory of Health. And you can look you can find that it's out now, and both of our books came out the same year in 2016. So kind of interesting. It's we uncovered a lot of the same research, and so there's really critical pieces of information and research that you need to know, and this can really make a huge, huge difference for you, I believe, in how you feel and the quality of your health and life. So Shannon will be here soon, and I'm just going to introduce her and also share with you some of the topics that we're going to be covering today. So being healthy in this crazy, busy modern world is not easy, and any of us that have dealt with a chronic condition or autoimmune condition know this better than anyone else. And, people are getting, unfortunately, chronic conditions are on the rise. It's exponentially on the rise. And what is the reason for this? There are all sorts of reasons for this that we could look into, whether it's, not being able to respond well to stress, environmental toxins. There are many, many issues at stake here. A lot of doctors and healthcare practitioners are starting to feel extremely overwhelmed because a lot of people that are contacting them have chronic conditions. And, 1 to 2% of genetics is involved in any type of illness. However, I don't want to get my facts wrong. Usually genetics involve 1 to 2%, but the rest of it is very much controlled by what's called epigenetics, which means above and beyond genetics, meaning that what's called lifestyle medicine, things that you can do that are within your control, can make a huge difference in your quality of life. So I see Shannon here in the studio. I'm going to welcome her in just a few moments. And again, I just want to introduce her really briefly. and I'll welcome her in. So for journalist Shannon Harvey, finding the solution became personal when she was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. This inspired a 10-year journey testing treatments, searching through thousands of scientific papers, and interviewing pioneering researchers. And I can't tell you, these are all of the pioneering researchers that you're probably familiar with, like Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Andrew Weil, and much more. So even the founder of Mind Body Green is in her documentary. Jacob, Dr. Well, I'll have her fill in who all of the names are, but these are all people that you're going to recognize, and it's really a fun. Actually, Dr. Herbert Benson is in her documentary. So, about 10 years ago, she faced a personal crisis that doctors couldn't give her a cause or a cure. So as a journalist, she went in search of answers, and she compiled the latest research proving a connection between our body, mind, and health. And like I mentioned, she made a film which includes remarkable stories as well as the original researchers. These are, again, the people that you're going to recognize, and the research that she compiled it's truly compelling, and I really believe these are the answers that you've been looking for. But she has stories in her documentary as well as in her book, which we're going to be talking about today, The Whole Health Life, of people who have recovered from illnesses like cancer, heart disease, infertility, chronic pain, and MS, and much more. So The Whole Health Life is a follow-up to The Connection, which is the documentary. It's filled with simple, evidence-based solutions to help improve your health. The 10 chapters cover topics ranging from stress, emotions, beliefs, and relationships to food, sleep, and exercise, as well as healthcare, the environment, and how to make the healthy changes last. Discover why meditation can turn off genes affecting disease, how sitting is considered the new smoking, one simple change to your diet that can add years to your life, a walk in nature that can boost your cancer-fighting cells by more than 50%, how getting enough sleep makes you smarter, faster, and even better looking, how being positive can help you heal more quickly from a wound, and how loneliness is on par with obesity and addiction now and is a leading risk factor in chronic illness and chronic disease. So on that note, I'm going to welcome investigative journalist Shannon Harvey into the studio, and I can't wait to talk to her. We have so much time we have so much ground to cover. We're going to do our best to hopefully hit some of the biggest points for you today. If you have any comments or questions, you can type them into the chat room, and we'll cover as much as we can. Definitely check out the documentary, The Connection, as well as her new book that's out, The Whole Health Life. And on that note, here is Shannon Harvey. Hi, Shannon. How are you today?
Hi. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And Shannon, I can't tell you, I've already watched the documentary, The Connection, and I have to tell you, this is thank you, first of all, thank you so much for doing this and putting all of that research together in one place that is very easy to understand and also very compelling. And it's just a phenomenal documentary. And you really do. You interview all of the key players, and you really kind of highlight all of the major research that is, I think, really relevant for people that have a chronic condition or autoimmune condition. So I just want to thank you so much for doing that.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was very much a project of passion. It took 3 years from the moment my husband and I decided that we were going to do it to the day that we had the premiere there in the US. But gee, we're glad we did it. And we keep hearing from other people like yourself who have seen the film, and they reach out and they say, wow, thanks so much for putting it all together. And, I feel like I've been getting some answers, which really was why we set out to make it.
Right, and it really does touch a lot of the key points for me, Shannon, because I've been through this myself, and I have a book out as well, and I ran across a lot of the same research, but to have it all in a documentary where it's super crystal clear, and I think is a huge, it's a huge benefit. And I was reading that your documentary is being seen, it's being used now in in medical school, right? Like it's Can you tell us a little bit more about the film and some of the key points in it, and then we'll also, of course, we'll cover your book that is the companion, right, to The Connection, The Whole Health Life.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, the film is, it's called The Connection, Mind Your Body, and it's all about the latest science proving that there is a connection between our mind, body, and health. And really, I set out to make this film because, like so many other people, the statistics are now 2 in 3 people will be diagnosed with a chronic disease in their lifetime. So we're the majority, not the minority. And like so many others, I was really feeling quite frustrated. I'd been following conventional medical advice for years and diligently taking the steroidal medication that I was being prescribed. And then when I wasn't really getting any better on that, because that was really just treating my symptoms rather than the underlying causes, I turned to alternative medicine. And it was 1 year when I realized that I'd spent $30,000 on my health. I was doing my tax returns and I put it all together and realized that I'd spent that amount of money. I went, this is crazy. I'm still sick. Like, I haven't got the answers yet that I'm after. But, being a journalist, I feel, if I was born to ask a question in this lifetime, it's why. And so that's what I started asking myself. Why am I sick? And is there a how? Is there a how can I get better? And that's when I started turning towards science, because it really, we're at this stage now where, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years, there has been an absolute explosion in robust evidence demonstrating that when it comes to the treatment of chronic disease, we need to take a whole health, whole life approach. And that means considering the fact that our mind and body are inseparable. And even if it's just because you need to be in the right headspace in order to look after yourself, there is the link between your mind and body. But it actually goes much further than that. And for example, in my film, The Connection, it talks about the connection between our brain and our gut, which really, you've probably heard about how researchers are now talking about a second brain in our gut, which although it can't write a sonnet like Shakespeare, and although we can't actually hear it talk, it's actually fun. Not yet, it's actually a fundamental component. It makes us us. And so we made this film, The Connection, and we released it by this worldwide tour, and it just got this extraordinary response. And as you mentioned, the biggest surprise to us was the response that we had from the medical community, and it was very much a feeling like finally somebody's actually put this together, and the integrity of the excerpts that are featured in the film are so robust that it's really, it's finally we're all talking the same language.
Right. I can't exactly, Shannon. I think is, the whole documentary is a masterpiece, not to mention extremely relevant, and anyone who has any type of chronic condition or autoimmune condition or who wants to stay well, because the reality is that most people are going to face some type of health challenge at some point in their lives. So this is information that everyone needs to know, and you truly have compiled the most relevant information. Not to mention you have exclusive interviews with, is it Jason Wakop, the founder of Mind Body Green. You have Dr. Herbert Benson in there. You have Dr. Andrew Weil. You have Dr. Dean Ornish. You have every single key player of really a lot of the integrative doctors who have been the leaders in their fields. And kind of what Dr. Andrew Weil was mentioning is that hopefully one day we won't even have to call it integrative medicine anymore, because it will just be the way that we approach health and well-being now, which is, in a nutshell, to realize that the mind and body are interconnected, if not really even one and the same thing. And so there are so many key points. I highly recommend that everyone check out this life-altering documentary. You can find all of the relevant information that you need in it. And then I know that your book is a follow-up to it to help you go deeper, and even you have takeaways in there and how to get started with each key point. But the power of the mind is so important and so relevant. That's one of the key topics, the connection between mind and body, and stress and how it plays with how it affects DNA, and how even though we can also epigenetics, which is really meaning above and beyond genetics, is a huge component, meaning that we have control over how our genes express themselves and whether genes turn on or off, and the role of stress, how stress, even beyond DNA, can really, when we have too much stress, we reach that allostatic load, right? And then we can start to experience what's called oxidative stress, which is creating potentially chronic inflammation, which is where a lot of these illnesses, autoimmunity and other types of chronic inflammatory disorders start to spring up. So the documentary is it's joy to watch. It's easy to watch. It's very compelling. It takes you from A to Z. So you start with the mind-body connection, and then you take people all the way through to how, shortened telomeres can affect disease and aging, but how also we now know that we can actually reverse those telomeres. And isn't it Dr. Dean Ornish? Isn't he the one who, he has his really famous program that he's been doing forever, right? The mind, what is that? It's mind-body stress reduction. People that even had like psoriasis and heart disease are able to, through diet and exercise and meditation, right, they're able to reverse a lot of these conditions. And Shannon, what was your experience like with what are some of the key takeaways for you that you really is it like learning how to manage stress, or like what do you think it was ultimately that made you sick? I mean, I know we can never really separate anything, right? Because it's usually because the body's all connected.
It's a funny thing. I think so many of us, when we get sick, we want to know the one reason why. And we want to say, okay, it's this macro or micronutrient. That's the reason why I'm sick. And often people, first of all, turn to their diet and they, experiment with elimination diets. And sometimes people get great results and they do actually get some answers that they're looking for. They might cut out sugar or carbs or proteins or, whatever, their micro or macronutrient is, and they get some results. But ultimately, I've never actually really met somebody who that was it. It was just this one thing that was the reason why I was sick. Often, and that, I think for years and years I was looking for the one thing, and I was looking for the one thing that caused it. So it was like, it must have been stress, or it must have been, some dysfunctional relationships, or it must have been this, dietary component or whatever. Or I wanted one thing to fix me, which was I want to take this one medication, or I want to take this one yoga class, or I want to take this one thing, and that's going to solve all my problems. Yeah. But really, I think if there was one takeaway from all of this, it's that there is no one thing that's going to cure you or cause your issues. It's that it's our overall lives, it's our whole lifestyles that are out of whack. And you mentioned some of the people that I've interviewed, and I have to say, so you've mentioned Dr. Dean Ornish, and he's got a really comprehensive lifestyle program that incorporates yoga and meditation, as well as a healthy plant-based diet, and a really strong community support component to his programs. And he's been getting some interesting results in clinical trials where they've been able to stop, slow, or reverse things like heart disease. They've had some interesting results with type 2 diabetes, and they've even shown some promising results with prostate cancer. And so that's really interesting. And then, I went over there to Boston and I interviewed Dr. Herbert Benson, who you also mentioned. And his program, which also involves introducing meditation and yoga, healthy eating, and community support, his program's shown to reduce the number of doctor's visits that people with chronic diseases are required to have. People are feeling much better. And then I interviewed, you mentioned as well, Jon Kabat-Zinn, whose mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which is an 8-week program.
Oh, he was the one who does the, right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So Jon Kabat-Zinn, he's shown some really interesting results in his programs as well, and it's becoming increasingly accepted in mainstream medical circles, primarily because it's been getting some really interesting things demonstrating that in just 8 weeks of the program, they've shown, for example, that key regions of the brain which are associated with stress, which I'm sure many listeners are already familiar with, which is the amygdala, and they've shown in just 8 weeks that the amygdala of people who are on this program has actually gotten smaller. And so, but when you look at all these programs, I also interviewed another extraordinary person who's one of my own mentors here in Australia, named Professor George Jelinek, whose own mother suicided after the deterioration of her chronic disease of multiple sclerosis, and then he's an emergency medical doctor, one of the sort of most prestigious here in Australia, and he was diagnosed with MS as well, and he just sort of saw his whole life unfolding before him, and he went, well, what can I do? And he hit the research papers, and he came up with a program to reverse MS, and that's what he's done. And he's not only done it himself, he's done it in a number of other people. But my point is that when you look at all of these programs across the board, and you look at what they've all got in common, number one, they don't shun conventional medicine, so they're working in harmony in concert with conventional medical approaches. But number two, they're looking at diet. Number three, they're looking at mindfulness and meditation practices. They're looking at introducing regular movement into their people's lives who've potentially, been sedentary. They've introduced, and this one here for me is, I think, one of the keys to the success of these programs is that there's a real sense of community, that we're all in this together, we're all encouraging each other along. And when you actually say, well, what is the one thing? If you really want one thing to take away from it, the one thing is that it's a whole health, whole life approach. It's not just, I'm going to meditate every single day and all my problems are going to go away. There's so much more to it than that.
That's your gift. I mean, you have many, many gifts, and it's so, to be able to gather all this research and present it in a very clear and precise way that people can really use is one gift. And I think that also, I really appreciate when you say that, Shannon, that you can't distill it down to just one thing. It's a holistic approach, and thank you so much for that beautiful reminder, because it's so true. And it's really like when your body and mind and even heart and more are all in that kind of like kind of a balance, but it's like a dynamic balance, right? Like you're not feeling kind of like overwhelmed by life, but you're responding in a positive way to it, and so is your body, even on the visceral level, right? Like it's kind of everything coming together. That's just a really great reminder, and I was really amazed by the doctor that you interviewed, who's, like you were saying, whose mother had been diagnosed with it. She had progressive MS, and he was also diagnosed later as well, and then he was able to recover, and he's been able to help other people. And I remember him saying in the documentary that for a long time he didn't want to necessarily promote how he had, kind of how he'd gotten better, because it wasn't necessarily accepted by mainstream medicine yet. But there is this beautiful balance now also occurring between alternative and mainstream medicine, and we currently call it integrative medicine. But I fully agree that we're starting to really join forces, and I really want people to have a sense of hope. And then, earlier you also, you mentioned this at the very beginning, and this is also in your documentary, that there's a gentleman in there who had cancer, right? And what he was looking for was like that feeling of conviction that I will be well one way or the other, and not in a he was lacking that conviction, right? Like he needed that sense of hope, which that belief that comes from, I think, frame of mind, the power of the mind, but also being connected to community and having other people being able to hold that space for him, and how we can all hold that space for one another. And it's really fascinating how there's like that larger connection too, right? Like between kind of like the universal mind and our body as well. And Shannon, I'm going to take a really quick break, and let's come back and let's dive into your book now, The Whole Health Life, and maybe some of the topics that you would like to share in there in particular, and then how people can find both your documentary, The Connection, as well as your new book that's out. And we'll be right back. You're listening to The Wellness Coach on Blog Talk Radio. welcome back. You're listening to The Wellness Coach on Blog Talk Radio. I'm your host, Edie Summers, and today my very special guest is investigative journalist Shannon Harvey, and we're talking about both her documentary that's out, which is called The Connection, Mind Your Body, as well as her new book that's out, which is a follow-up to the documentary, which is called The Whole Health Life, How You Can Learn to Get Healthy, Find Balance, and Live Better in the Crazy, Busy, Modern World. And for Shannon, finding this solution became personal when she was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. This inspired a 10-year journey testing treatments, searching through thousands of scientific papers, like I mentioned, and interviewing these pioneering researchers that we were also just mentioning. And in the book, The Whole Health Life, covers simple, evidence-based solutions to help improve your health. The 10 chapters cover topics ranging from stress and emotions to beliefs and relationships, to food, sleep, and exercise, as well as healthcare, the environment, and how to make all those healthy changes last. It includes dozens of interviews with leading experts and draws on over 1,000 academic studies from all around the world, which are all referenced in the back for those who want to go further, which is amazing. And also each chapter also includes recommended reading lists and web links to additional resources, downloads, podcasts, and interviews. And the author, Shannon Harvey, who's in the studio with me today, this is her first book. She's an Australian investigative journalist. She spent many years working for the leading news organizations in Australia, such as ABC and Fairfax. In 2014, she released her first feature documentary, The Connection, about the link between our mind, body, and health. She now writes for publications such as Mind, Body, Green, and her own popular blog, while balancing her health, work, and being the mother of 2 adventurous boys. And on that note, I'm going to bring Shannon back into the studio. So Shannon, can you tell us more specifically about maybe some of the bigger takeaways from your book now, The Whole Health Life, and also where can people find your book and documentary?
Sure. So to start with, you can go to my website, which is thewholehealthlife.com, where you'll find all the information you need. That's where you can find information about where to get the book, online or wherever else. And also you can get a copy of the film via a DVD or a download or a stream or whatever your preference is. But I guess, to answer your other question, which is about what are some of the key takeaways, we were just talking about how so many of us are really wanting to find that one reason why we're sick, or that one way that we can get better, or we're all after that one thing. And really, actually, the big takeaway from me is there is no big one thing, and that it's really, we need to take a whole health, whole life approach to being well, staying well, or getting well. I think, one of my favorite studies that I came across while I was putting the finishing touches on the book, the final chapter of The Whole Health Life, I've entirely dedicated to making healthy changes last. Because, and I think, particularly at this time of the year, we set out with the best of intentions to change our lives. We might say, right, this is the year I am going to eat healthy. I'm going to cut the crap. I'm going to eat fruit and veggies, and I'm going to lose a ton of weight, and this is the year. Or we say, right, I'm going to start exercising regularly, or this is the year I'm going to start a meditation habit, or whatever else. And inevitably, depending on what it is you're trying to do, up to 90% of us will have failed, often within the first week.
Yeah, it's really true. It's really true, unfortunately. It can be, absolutely. Absolutely. If people don't feel like they're being successful, people usually give up. So that's part of it too. Is they need to feel like they have success along the way. But absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a whole variety of reasons for us fail. Well, fail is a very strong word, but there's a whole variety of reasons that our healthy intentions don't actually get followed through. And researchers call this the intention behavior gap. and they're looking at, how can we overcome this intention behaviour gap. And I've spoken to a number of the leading researchers in healthy behaviour change, and this was part of the research process of writing the book as a follow-on from the film. And so I decided that it was also important, it was also useful that it needed an entire chapter. So whereas in other chapters in the book, I focus on things like stress or, emotions, or, chapter 3 is about belief, chapter 4 is about food. There's a whole chapter there dedicated to movement and sleep and our relationships. So there's a lot of specific topics in the book, but I really wanted to make the final message about how do we make these changes stick. And my favorite study to kind of summarize what my conclusions are here is a study that's been called the Longevity Project, and it's been headed up by a researcher named Howard Friedman, who's a professor of psychology at the University of California in Riverside, and he's been the custodian of what's been called determined data for more than 20 years, and he's enlisted the help of a whole bunch of researchers and graduate students to help process and analyze this vast amount of material collected on people over their entire lifetimes. And what was really interesting about this study is it was a really, really long-running study, and it followed these people throughout their lives, throughout the war, throughout, depression, through good times and bad times. They started when they were young, went right through their lives, and, until they may have become parents or grandparents. And he wanted to know, what was the sort of the key personality trait that would lead to a long, happy life? And the results were really interesting in the sense that it showed that, having strong relationships seems to be one of the keys. But what was even more interesting was that it wasn't the people who were cheerful, who, positive and who like to tell jokes or laugh a lot, who live long lives. And it wasn't the people who devoted themselves to running marathons, and it wasn't the people who, only ate, organic broccoli. It wasn't those people who actually lived the longest. And what was really interesting in terms of what kind of personality led to a long life, it was the people who were diligent, thorough, hardworking, reliable, committed, persevering, and he summed it all up into one word, and you're going to hate me when I tell you what it is, because it sounds really boring. But the word is conscientiousness.
Oh, no, actually, Shannon, I love that, because that sounds a lot like mindfulness. It sounds like another way of saying mindfulness, actually, which I think is...
That's right.
Do you think that would be connected?
Yeah, conscientiousness. It's hardly clickbait. People in the digital world, it's not really going to make a catchy headline, but it's the people who engage regularly in a variety of healthy behaviours. They don't smoke. They eat healthier foods on the whole. They're less likely to abuse drugs or drink excess amounts of alcohol. They're not going to drive without a seatbelt.
And which is being conscientious,
Yeah, that's right. And so I think so much of it is, sorry.
Well, no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. And also, I wanted to let you know, Shannon, we have a caller on the line. I didn't know if you'd be interested in taking a caller. I just wanted to mention, though, to me, it sounds like what I'm discovering more and more is that it's rituals, it's healthy rituals, both with ourselves and also engaging with other people. It's, again, doing things over and over again, even if it's just a little bit. And it's our bodies and minds and souls can get used to that, and then that's what creates well-being. So I think that being conscientious, being mindful, and having those healthy rituals in place, I think is maybe ties it all together. And I thank you so much for mentioning that. And Shannon, are you open to taking a caller, or do you prefer that someone comment through the chat room? Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to bring our caller on, and we'll just bring them into the studio. Hi, you're on the air. Do you have a question or comment for Shannon?
No, I actually just started to listen. I didn't get a chance to really get a gist of what you were talking about, but I will press 1, if anything.
Okay.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. So I'm gonna put you back on mute. And so Shannon, I have to say that is I really feel like that's like it's coming full circle with that. I don't think conscientious is a bad word at all. Actually, I think it's actually or a boring word at all. I think it is that it's being engaged, right? Like I like it when you used that phrase. And Shannon, I want to respect your time. I know you're calling all the way from Australia, so I'm going to let you, let me know when you would like to end our interview, but I am happy to keep talking because I feel like this is all such relevant information, and I want to remind everyone again that they can go to Shannon, you have 2 websites. Is the wholehealthlife.com, is that your main website?
Yeah, that's the main one. That's
where
the main one. You'll find the blog and the podcast and all that sort of stuff there. But the film is theconnection.tv. That's the film's website. Yeah.
Theconnection.tv. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to regale you with another one of my favorite studies.
Please. I'm happy to. Carry on.
Okay, so, this is the time of year where so many of us set out really good intentions. Particularly we might set out an intention about healthy eating. We might say, this is the year I'm going to lose some weight and I'm going to stick to my diet. And we've already talked about how, depending on what it is that we've resolved to do, the majority of us aren't going to actually achieve what we set out to do, and there's a variety of reasons for that. But nevertheless, there was a really interesting study this was a meta-analysis, which means it was a study of all the studies, and they wanted to figure out which diet works best for weight loss. And so they looked at 48 randomized controlled trials that included data from over 7,000 people who tried various big brand diets. So, and you'll be familiar with them there in the US. The Atkins diet, the South Beach diet, the Zone diet, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, the Ornish diet, a bunch of these diets. And what was really interesting was their conclusion was that ultimately what mattered the most for weight loss wasn't which diet people went on, but it was whether or not they actually stuck to their diet. So when you ask the question, which diet is best for weight loss?
Interesting.
The answer is
the wrong question.
The one you'll stick to.
I love that. It's almost that. You know what?
Back to the message about.
That's back to the same message, and it's almost like it's usually. I think we often look for like some complex answer, right, or some complex reason, and it's oftentimes. It's a simpler reason or a simpler cause, and it's something that's almost right in front of us. And I love that. It's almost like, being able to see, not being able to see the forest for the trees, right? Am I getting that metaphor correct? Or maybe that's the opposite. Like it's not which diet.
You can't study the forest by looking at one tree, can you? You can't study the whole forest just by focusing on one tree or one plant or whatever.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. This is really, the idea again of just it's those healthy rituals. I'm hearing this more and more, and especially I believe I heard this also from a TED Talk. The healthy ritual of having a regular connection with one or more people, whether it's every week, and for some people in religion, it's the rituals, right, of their religion. But it's maybe girlfriends getting together once a week, or you're going to church every Sunday, or maybe you have your own healthy rituals, whether it's doing yoga or meditation or shopping at Whole Foods, like whatever it is, like that keeps you, and maybe or maybe exercising with your friend, or it's that again, it comes back to that what's regular, right? Like it's whatever you stick to, whatever keeps you sticking to it, right?
I think as well, we were using the word conscientiousness before, and it does sound a little bit like a boring word, but and I talk about this in the book, in this final chapter about how to make healthy changes last, which is that just because you're conscientious or healthy, regularly healthy or consistently healthy, but however you want to talk about it, it doesn't mean that you're boring. And the example I give is that my husband, Jules, he's the executive producer with me on The Connection, he's got a passion for mountaineering. He loves climbing mountains. And he loves climbing mountains that are very, remote and could be considered quite dangerous. And a few years ago, he was planning what was called a first ascent of a mountain called Mount Vinson, which is the highest mountain in Antarctica. So you can pretty much imagine it's the most remote place on the planet. And I, it was a very worrying time for me because there he was. I couldn't contact him. He was doing this crazy thing that nobody had ever done before. My worries were significantly lessened, and it's because I know how careful Jules is and how well he plans. And his friend who he was doing this expedition with, and his friend whose name's Duncan Chessel, he's a well-known mountaineer who's known for summiting Mount Everest a number of times. I consider Duncan to be one of the most responsible, thorough, cautious, conscientious people I've ever met. But he's also completely crazy.
Do those often go hand in hand, I wonder?
For the sake of
That's the dark side of conscientious. No, I'm kidding. Interesting, I wonder. It's like the flip side.
You can still... Yeah, but my point is
you can
still do amazing things and crazy things and not be boring.
Love that.
At the same time as being careful and planned and considered and consistent. Yeah.
Consistent. I think consistent is a big part of it. That's a really great point. And you can still be passionate. And Shannon, let's take a really quick break, and then if it's okay with you, let's circle back to what we talked about in the beginning, which is understanding the link between mind, body, and chronic illness. For anyone listening who has, say, a chronic illness or autoimmune disorder, and they're looking for specific answers. And we're going to wrap up, but I'm just going to take a really short break, and maybe we can just do like a really short summary just to give people hope. I often find that that's what people are seeking to begin with, is that place of hope where they feel like they can move forward from there. Because that can make all the difference in the world. So let's take a really short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Wellness Coach on Blog Talk Radio. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am speaking with investigative journalist Shannon Harvey. She did this absolutely amazing documentary along with her husband. It's called The Connection, Mind, Your Body, as well as she has a follow-up book to the documentary, which is called The Whole Health Life. And I just wanted to cover, Shannon, I think I know that, something I run across a lot when I'm talking to people that have a chronic condition or an autoimmune condition is, I think a lot of people are open to the mind-body connection, and at the same time, I think there's this underlying fear that this has to be genetic. Whatever I have has to be genetic because I have too many symptoms or something along those lines. And I was just wondering if, you could maybe give your thoughts on how to give people hope, and also like maybe addressing, maybe what was the first thing that gave you hope, or what gave you hope along the way, and have you run into other people like maybe what gave them hope? I know that one of the people in your documentaries, like I was mentioning before, he had cancer, and he was able to find someone who was able to give him a sense of hope and that sense of conviction so that he could move forward from there. And kind of, I think actually when you have that sense of hope, ironically, it starts to help your body to heal and helps your body to relax and kind of moves your body into what's called the relaxation response, which is what Dr. Herbert Benson discovered, and which is the opposite of the stress response. I think being sick and not feeling well is very stressful, and I think it can be a vicious cycle for people. And I wonder if you can speak to the power of hope and the power of the mind, and maybe the mind, the mind-body connection, and what gave you hope along the way when you were first on your journey, and or what have you found from other people?
Yeah, so hope is a really big topic that I could talk for hours on, and I think without hope, it's very difficult to have conviction. And you're talking about Ian Gawler, who is one of the case studies featured in The Connection. He's a man who was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he's a very prominent figure here in Australia because he kind of gets around with just one leg because he's had a leg removed from the hip down as a result of his cancer, and he's still kicking on. He's doing really well now. He leads these amazing meditation retreats, and he provides a lot of hope to other people where they who are lost and searching. And his is a really remarkable story, and we do hear his similar stories over and over again, people who recover and defy the odds. For my own personal moment of hope, I remember really distinctly when there were two key moments. One was coming across this document that had been written for medical students by a man named Dr. Craig Hassard, who's one of the 10 experts featured in The Connection. And this was a document that summarised all the evidence linking the mind and body, and how, by coming at chronic disease with a mind-body approach, you really can get significantly better results. And that was a massive turning point for me. But the second turning point was meeting Professor George Jelinek, who is basically, he is as credible as people get in terms of in the Australian medical community, a professor of emergency medicine. He wrote the textbook on emergency medicine in Australia, and he has recovered from multiple sclerosis, and he's done that by taking this whole health lifestyle approach. And so I guess if listeners are looking for hope, I would say check out Professor George Jelinek's story. It's remarkable. His website is Overcoming Multiple Sclerosis. And really, it's not only done in him, but it's been done in others as well.
Yes, and I would say even check out, first I would say start with watch The Connection, because I feel like that gives you a lot of hope, especially if you've never heard of, some people have never heard of this, this integrative research, this mind-body research. I think that alone can give you a lot of hope, and know that other people have walked this path before you, both, professionals who are doing the research and also people who have been through it, and in some cases they're both, right? So it's kind of seeing people that have looking to people that have walked before you, and then knowing that maybe that there's community, even if you can't, maybe you might feel isolated. I think a lot of people that are sick that have chronic conditions feel isolated, and that also can I feel like take away that sense of hope. So just know that you're connected, but also actively seek connection. I guess I would add that in as my 2 cents is find that connection. I mean, I guess that actually kind of circles back to your documentary. Like, there's a connection, right, between the mind and body, but also find that connection between yourself and others, right, and make it a priority, and maybe make that your conviction, or make that your first conscientious or mindful choice, is to find and seek community no matter what, right? And then go from there.
Absolutely. Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Love it. Well, Shannon, I can't thank you enough for being here. You're welcome back anytime. And again, thank you so much for literally this documentary, and I'm still reading your book, and it's so great. And I can't thank you enough for having the courage and the skills and the gifts to put together in such a comprehensive and also, easy way to absorb such life-changing information. The Connection is just phenomenal, and I'm not surprised that places are using it in terms of training their medical students and beyond, because it really is, it puts everything together. And thank you so much for just putting together your book as a follow-up. I know you've had a lot of amazing response, and I think that was one of the reasons you put together your book was because of that response. Like, I just want to thank you for being here and for giving us hope.
Well, thank you for your enthusiasm, because as you would know, sometimes this work, well, let me just say this. It takes a lot of passion and dedication to keep at it. And it's really lovely hearing from people like you who can wholeheartedly appreciate it. So thank you so much for having me on. And hopefully people who have heard this are going to find some answers that they've been looking for.
Yes, absolutely, and I know that they will. And everyone, Shannon, again, thank you so much for being here. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. And again, go check out theconnection.tv to find the documentary. It's called The Connection, Mind Your Body. I would recommend watching that first. And then go check out thewholehealthlife.com to find Shannon's book, which is a follow-up to the documentary. It's called The Whole Health Life, and we want to thank you so much for everyone for listening. Shannon, thank you so much for being here. And everyone, we hope that you have a really relaxed and beautiful and healthy and connected rest of your day and week and life wherever you are in this world. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.